Hey there, fair gamers. How are you? It's Graham, and we're here to talk about edu-gaming tonight. I am pulling up the live stream right now on my laptop. Let's get that muted. And yeah, this is a passionate topic for our store. I have to apologize because I am kind of sick. I don't know if it's allergies or what. My voice is a wee bit hoarse, but you know, what can you do, right? So let me straighten out this picture here. I want to make sure that I'm looking good for the camera. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight. Let's see here. I am a little bit off center here. Let's see what I can do. If I do one of these, and if I do one of these, maybe that'll work a little bit better. There you go. We like that. Yes. So let me pull up my notes here. At Fair Game, we just believe in a lot of the benefits for tabletop gaming in general, and there's a whole lot of them. But tonight we're going to talk specifically about how we might be able to use tabletop gaming as a tool in an educational environment. So that could be for teachers, obviously, but also parents when you're teaching things at home, or if you're homeschooling, librarians, museums and curators, conservatories. There's a lot of opportunities, a lot of places that could have an opportunity to use tabletop gaming. And we're going to talk about some of those benefits. This is sort of an introduction to a much larger topic. So as time goes on, we're going to continue to do some of these gaming and education things as we continue to roll stuff out. So if you are watching live in the chat, be sure to give lots of shout outs. I want to see them. I want to be able to react to them. And I want to hear what you have to say and what you have to add. So to start, I want to talk about, well, basically in what world does a game actually benefit us as a tool? So my best comparison for this is I want us to think about gym class. Okay, so this is putting us in the school environment. What's the point of gym class? Well, it teaches us fitness. It teaches us physical coordination. It also fosters a love for sports and athleticism and fitness. But it's not, it's not just lectures about healthy eating and then going outside and jogging, right? Like, that's not what gym class is all about. When we're in school and we're going to gym, we're playing games. We're going outside and we're playing sports. We're playing dodgeball and kickball and tag and all these other wonderful experiences. And that kind of sets the stage for us to realize that this is something that we enjoy. And it also gives instructors an opportunity to say, like, hey, you like being in shape. You like running around. There's endorphins going into your brain. This is something that you might care about. And so that instructor can then start to instill those lifelong skills, even outside of, you know, how many fruit am I supposed to eat every day, right? Like, that's a detail, but really, I think that instructor, particularly in like a K through 8 kind of setting, is trying to instill an appreciation for fitness. So similarly, when we're in school for history, or when we are in school for math, there's lifelong skills that are trying to be instilled in that environment that, you know, you don't necessarily need to, well, what am I trying to say? So these lifelong skills, again, I apologize. I'm going to blame my sickness. I've been feeling the fatigue. My energy drink has not quite fully kicked in. We want to instill as an instructor an appreciation for these things, regardless on what the details are. It's not so much in what year did the War of 1812 happen, but what were the effects of wars in human history? And is that something that you find interesting? And is that something that you can base your philosophy on, appreciating how cultures have been formed, right? I think those are a lot of the things that that instructors and people are really looking for, right? I'm checking on the stream here to see if anyone is commenting. If you are, say hi. So, all that to say, gym class uses a game structure to instill its lesson. And we believe that you can use tabletop, as opposed to video gaming, tabletop gaming to instill whatever it is that you are trying to teach within a given lesson. So there's a couple pretty specific aspects of games that make it a great learning tool compared to, say, like a lecture, right? When you're doing what I'm doing and you're sitting in your chair, you're up in front of the whiteboard and you're talking to your class or you're talking to your kids, they listen, which is good, but there's only so much information that is being processed and heard for a variety of reasons, and lecture is not always the best way to learn stuff and to reinforce stuff. So that's where games come in. There's a couple of specific benefits that I want to outline. First of all, let's talk about active learning, right? When you sit down to learn a new piece of software or a new skill for work, it's okay when someone explains to you how to use that software. And it's better if they sit down and show you, instead of just explaining, yeah, you need to go to the edit and then down to preferences and over to this thing. If they actually show you as they do it and you see the benefit, that's even better. And lastly, the best way to learn that new skill is to be the one sitting in this chair and have someone walk you through it, because that active element is causing whatever the skill is, whatever that knowledge, to pass through your brain into your fingertips. And as it passes through your brain, that is going to commit it to memory, right? And the things that you're doing as... I'm checking the chat here. Hi, Kyle. Hi, Christy. I'm glad you guys are here. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Kyle is making a stupid joke. Better a wee bit horse than bit by a wee horse. And you know what? Ponies do have a vicious bite, so I agree with that, Kyle. So back to active learning. The act of doing something is going to commit whatever knowledge that you acquire through doing that to your brain better. So, the act of doing a game is therefore going to commit whatever process that game is teaching, whatever lessons or thoughts that game is providing, that's going to get stuck in someone's brain a lot better, right? So that's the first one. Secondly, games are fun, and there's a little bit of a dopamine response. Right? It's the same. It's a concept that goes into like mobile games pretty heavily, because those are very shallow games, but the objective of a game design company when they're making a mobile game is to try to create those dopamine hits. They want to create those hormonal hits where you are doing something and interacting with the device, and then your brain says, oh, I like that. And it releases a little bit of hormones, just a little bit, into your bloodstream to do that. Similarly, tabletop games create a dopamine function that says, oh, hey, I like that. There's some hormones that get released into your brain and say, hey, you know what, this is kind of fun. And that is going to brighten up one's brain. It's going to make them a lot more alert, and they're going to be paying more attention to whatever it is going on around them, right? And lastly, I think tabletop games in a classroom setting or a group setting specifically is just a really good opportunity to build rapport and camaraderie, right? Think about a college class or a lecture. You go into the class, you sit down at the desk, you listen, there's a bunch of information that gets floating in the air. You hope your notes are going to be good enough to study by later, and then you leave. right? You don't really get to know anyone else in that environment. It's not really an environment you appreciate. You're just there because... I don't know why my phone just went off. I want to make sure that didn't... my phone just went off. Sorry about that. I don't know who was calling me or why, but the stream is still live, so we're good. Whew! Crisis averted. So, yes, if you are in an environment where you're more comfortable, where you care more about that environment, and you care more about the people in that environment, that is a better situation for learning. Like, that is a better environment to learn in and spend your time in, and it's going to ultimately be more engaging for all the students in that environment. So, there's three things right there, right? There's your dopamine hits. Hey, this is fun. There's your active learning by actively doing something that's going to kind of re-engage your brain, and establishing rapport and camaraderie in the group, right? There's a couple of other benefits to gaming and education, but those are the three I wanted to hit on. If you're watching the live stream and you think of something, blurt it out so that I can give you some credit, and then people who watch this video in the future can learn from your wisdom. So, in terms of how to get tabletop gaming into the classroom, and I put classroom in quotes because this is a sort of a broad term. It doesn't have to be actually like in a school. It could be just whatever learning environment you're creating. It's your kitchen table at home. It's an exhibit at your museum or your organization. It's whatever. So, a couple of different ways to use them. I'm going to go through them in a certain order that kind of assumes that you are doing this with some level of routine. But you could also just parse these separately, and they're just going to be beneficial things to using games in that classroom, right? So, first, it makes a lot of sense to me to start with games that teach the structure of using games in this environment. And I think a lot of teachers do this pretty often, right? Like, hey, if you finish your assignment, you can then do this game. Well, that does a couple of things. First of all, it introduces the concept of doing something fun in class. Okay, that's not terrible. Secondly, if it's like, hey, you can do this activity after you're done with your quiz. Okay, well, there's some structure around that activity. You are saying, well, other people are taking their quiz, so you can do this activity, but you needed to do this without getting up out of your chair, without yelling, without distracting other students. These are all things that you kind of structure into that game environment. And so what that does is it reinforces the fact that games being played while in the classroom are meant to be enjoyed, but also taken with a bit of seriousness, if that makes sense, right? Playing a game of apples to apples in a classroom is going to be a lot different than playing that game on my couch at home, right? So I'm just trying to say, you can start with your curriculum with just some simple games. It doesn't necessarily matter what that game entails, but you're going to, by virtue of playing that game in the classroom, suggest that playing games in the classroom has a structure to it, right? And that's kind of laying the foundation. So that's why it's my step one, right? So then we're going to move up to step two, which is using games to build culture and rapport. So again, this is that example that I gave in the college lecture hall, where if you just go to lectures and you just listen, I mean, that's like an audiobook where you have to be in a certain room to listen to it, right? Like, there's no real connection to that environment. But if you're in a space where people are going to be coming in repeatedly, like a classroom throughout the course of the school year, and you want to foster a culture, foster an environment, and encourage kids to, build bonds with each other, I think games are a really great framework for that. Specifically, group games. So instead of you finished your quiz, now you can do a thing. A group game is going to be like, okay, now the four of us have finished, so now we can go over here and we can do this activity. Or specifically like, hey, everyone, we're going to break up into groups, and in your small group, you are going to be playing this game. So that does a couple of things. The main thing is that it gets kids to be comfortable with one another, right? Like, I don't know Kelly at all, but now, you know, I've had a chance to play a couple games with Kelly. She's not so bad, right? So then the small group project comes up where we have to write a paper together, and it's like, you know what, Kelly, you're not the stranger that you once were in my mind. So now we cool, right? That's the kind of rapport that I'm talking about. It also establishes that your classroom can be fun and isn't full of cobwebs and mothballs, right? It's not some stale old classroom. I want to check in with the chat here. Christy says, from an education standpoint, the active engagement that happens during game. It was a notification. Lovely. No, don't turn around. What are you doing? How do I turn back around? What is going on? Why are technical difficulties so technical and difficult? Well, hi, how are you? I have reversed the camera now. So I managed to do that. There you go. That's the button I want. Ta-da! Okie dokie. Thanks, everyone, for your patience. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I appreciate you. Okie dokie. Hi, I'm back. I was just saying that, to Christy's comment, you know, as an educator, you're trying to get your kids engaged with the material, and the structure of "let me talk at you" is like maybe not the most engaging, right? Like it literally is not, and everyone knows it, right? So just that level of engagement that you get with tabletop gaming is a really useful tool. For some reason, my image is all blown out. Let me see if I can tap something fancy here to kind of fix that. Yeah, there it is. There it is, iPhone. You did it. I'm proud of you. All right. Back to what I was talking about. So I've talked about starting by just using games to teach that gaming in a classroom is something to be taken with some seriousness, with the structure. Now we've built some rapport with our classmates, and finally, and probably the part that you expected from the outset, is picking games that supplement your lesson plan. And oftentimes you're not going to find like the exact specific game that's going to teach the material, but if you can get within the genre of what you're talking about, then you're going to get kids thinking about the same topic and possibly, you know, connecting those dots, you know, tying together the things that they've learned in class versus whatever the subject material is in the game itself. So, think like a history game, or I should say a history class, and we're talking about the French and Indian War, and we're going to play a board game about the French and Indian War. And it's like, okay, well, maybe the takeaways that you want them to have are not being taught specifically in the game, but they're learning the map along the Great Lakes where this war was fought. They're learning what the factions are. Maybe the game has some of the notable historical figures, so now they're learning those names. And then they have a concept to back them up when they're listening to your lecture or reading the stuff in the textbook. So that's the kind of tangential connection that I just wanted to illustrate. So I have a fair few recommendations tonight for what's going on. Really quick, I wanted to touch base with all the teachers and other professionals that are watching the stream tonight. Thank you for surviving this long. Holy smokes, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster already, but we will not be defeated. I want you to know that Fair Game has a 30% discount for educators. If you can provide some sort of letter, usually from a principal or someone else who is, you know, your boss, right? Basically, you know, we're not giving a 30% discount as a thank you to teachers to build up their own personal board game collection, but we want to be a resource to educators for whatever it is that they're doing. So if you're not aware that that discount exists, it does, and all you have to do is reach out to the store. You can email us through fairgamestore@gmail.com. It's probably the easiest way to get started. And we'll let you know more about what that program looks like, and we're happy to help you pick out a game collection for your classroom or do some research on games that will help instill specifically whatever it is that you are trying to teach, right? So, touching base with the chat, Kyle says, if you game together, you have a shared experience and you start building a connection with each other. And Christy responds, we know that relationship building is a huge component of effective teaching. I'm sure that there have been studies on it, and I do not have my master's in education, personally, because I work at a board game store. But, Christy and Kyle, you guys are absolutely correct. There's that certain level of rapport that just makes that environment feel less like a stale, empty room and more like this is a comfortable place. I don't have to be on edge, and I can focus those energies then on the purpose of all of this, which is, of course, to build a foundation in your knowledge base, right? Rebecca Strang in chat says, beyond being fun to play, I love games for their capacity to facilitate communication and socialization. Absolutely, Rebecca. We love that. Games are great for fine motor skills, memory, creative thinking, expressing creativity, and more. And she's got a link in the chat, more ideas on benefits of games. Absolutely, Rebecca. Thank you so much for chiming in. Games are such powerful tools for education and building community. Love using them at the library. And we love seeing them at the library too. And that's why that education discount does extend to librarians. If you're looking to build up a board game library, either for your programming or just for patrons to use and check out. Those are definitely things that we want to be involved with at Fair Game. So, we've talked a lot about benefits. We've talked a lot about that sort of three-step structure for getting stuff into the library itself. And so I do have a handful of recommendations here for you, and I certainly don't want to spend all night talking about stuff, but I am going to kind of rapid fire some games in your direction. If you're interested about those, let me know in the chat. Send us a message on Facebook or Instagram. We're happy to, we literally get paid to talk about games, so that's a resource for you, and we would love to talk more about them and how to best utilize those. So, with that in mind, I'm going to start with a couple of younger child opportunities, and we'll go up from there, right? So, let's start with Tiny Polka Dot. I think I brought this up on the chat or on the live stream before. Tiny Polka Dot is a tool for teaching basic counting, and so the foundations of arithmetic, largely addition and subtraction. We love it. There's basically a series of square cards that you can see on the back here. They've got a certain number of dots, but they're asymmetrical, so you can't just recognize the pattern. You have to actually count the dots, right? And you're going to use these cards in a series of small educational games. They've got an age range on this of 3 to 8, and I think really that 3, 4, 5, sort of that pre-K range is where Tiny Polka Dot really shines. They have some more complex games, though, for your kindergartners and first graders. So definitely something to look into. As all good games should be for this kind of age range, the time frame on these games is like 5 to 15 minutes. So this is a really good classroom activity, recess activity. You can do a single player version. So again, entertaining yourself after we do the activity or the quiz or whatever, Tiny Polka Dot has your back. Let's bounce up a little bit. So this is going to be your 8 and up range. I think this is sort of the all audiences family kind of thing, is the Flux line of games, and I've specifically pulled up Math Flux here. So Flux is a card game with ever-changing rules, and you have a hand of cards, and all of these cards have ways that affect the current rules that we're playing with. And they're going to help determine what the win condition for the game is. So there might be a card in play that says if you, for Math Flux specifically, it's if you fill out 3 goals, you win. And then they've got a goal card that says 25. Okay, well, we need to do math to get to that 25. And that's how we're going to score this goal card that's one of the 3 goal cards we need to win, right? So you're using these different cards to do some kind of math. So they've got an example here of if you have a 2 and a 3 and a 5, you can do 2 plus 3, that is 5, and then you multiply that by 5, you get your 25. So you can kind of do different algebraic concepts to get this number. I've talked about another game on the stream called Prime Climb, and that's sort of the same concept. That one's specifically more multiplication and division based, I would say. But Math Flux is a lot of fun because the rules are ever changing, and so then you have to pay attention to that, and all of a sudden you have to pay attention to math. What do you know? It's what we're talking about here. Different ways to get kids to pay attention. Rebecca Strang says, so many flavors of Flux that are great for classrooms or kids' gaming programs. I brought Math Flux, but there's like Astronomy Flux, there's Science Flux, there's all kinds of stuff. So this is sort of one of those tried and true games where it's been successful because it's fun, and then they make a bunch of different versions of it. So you can really find exactly whatever it is you are looking for within that kind of game. Let's do more all ages stuff. So, can you tell that it's hot? I feel like I keep lifting up my hat because, you know, my hair is all messed up and now I look all stupid in my new shirt. Timeline is a game that we recommend very often, and it has a series of historical events represented by cards, and it is generally your objective to place the cards that you draw in chronological order in an ever-growing timeline on the table. So you're going to have these cards that are laid out in a series of in a row, in a series of cards. Duh. You're going to have cards laid out in a row, and as you are adding your cards that you draw to the timeline, you're trying to place them in chronological order. So Timeline has a couple different versions of it. We carry the classic Timeline, which is a yellow package. This one is Timeline Events. We have Timeline Inventions in a green package. And I would, if I had to pick, I would use the blue one or the yellow one first. That's Events or Classic. But the idea is that you can buy different expansions and then shuffle them all together, right? Timeline is the kind of game where we recommend it to a family, like, hey, we want to play something after dinner. What's something that's short? You know, this is, well, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes maybe to play. Yeah, I got 15 minutes on the package. You play this after dinner. It's super fun. They come back the next day and they say, okay, we bought this, one box from you. Where are the other two? We want to buy them all. This game is awesome. So this game is super fun, and it gets you thinking about history, which I like this as a tool. Stop me if you're a history teacher, but how hard is it to get out of the silo of whatever the topic is that you're learning and realize that things are happening simultaneously across history? And Timeline is really good for bridging that gap, right? So it is, you know, I'm trying to think of a good example, but basically like what's happening around the world between 1900 and 1910? Well, there's an industrial revolution going on, and that's typically what we talk about. But there's some tensions in Europe that are going to lead to World War I. And on top of that, we've got sort of a Chicago stockyards situation. We've got child labor. That's an issue. That we're setting the groundwork for women's suffrage. All of this stuff is happening right after that turn of the century. There's World's Fairs going on around Chicago, New York. And you've got authors like H.G. Wells. Anyway, I'm just listing off stuff that all happens like around the same time in history, but are happening in different contexts. And I feel like Timeline, especially when you start shuffling all those cards together, teaches the mindset to look around and start drawing those connections for yourself. So, I love Timeline. Christy asks, what kind of events are in Timeline? Is there a way to customize the cards to a particular historical context? To customize the deck, I would recommend getting the suite of those 3 Timeline games and then just kind of going through and pulling out the ones that you kind of don't want. So the examples that they give on the back here, right? So they've got Julius Caesar appointed as emperor, founding of the Templars, the Crusades. Julius Caesar obviously would be ancient Rome, so that's going to be around 0 AD because Rome and Jesus and stuff, right? Woodstock, okay, 1960s. Fall of the Berlin Wall, California Gold Rush begins. So there's going to be a lot of disparity in these big Timeline events. So then you start mixing it together, and you get the inventions box, right? And it's the the invention of the aeroplane, right? And so that's referring to like a Kitty Hawk situation. Or the invention of the microwave. Okay, well, that was an accident, I think, because someone was trying to figure out how to make a bomb or something. So you really, they're kind of all over the place, is kind of where I'm getting with this, but I wanted to give you some examples. And what's cool about that is, okay, you're teaching social studies, you're teaching history, we're studying medieval times, all the medieval cards, boom, all go in there. The invention of the aqueduct, boom. Well, actually, that would actually be much before the Middle Ages. I was thinking of like the sewage in like a castle. Anyway, the invention of the crossbow. Hey, there you go. There's an example. Then you move on to the next unit, and it's like, whoop. Instead of that, here's your Renaissance package, and you can kind of, use that as an activity in a lesson. Rebecca has a great idea in chat. She says you could have students create their own cards too if you want to focus on a specific time period and make a custom deck. Absolutely, Rebecca. I love that. Christy says that she loves that as well. Something I was thinking about bringing up on a different video was how you can maybe not necessarily use a game as packaged, but take the concept from a game and extract it. Take a mechanism, a rule set, and extract it, keeping the fun part, but then really tailoring whatever that subject is to your lesson. This is a perfect example of that. Allie says, I was thinking about the custom deck too, especially good for fitting your study into a wider context. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, timeline's awesome. Let's switch gears a little bit. So I brought up on a previous stream our Perplexers books. And these are essentially logic puzzles that are rated by grade. So you can see up here it says level C in the corner for my Perplexers. You check on the back and that says that's for grade 6 and 7. So level C, that's for your middle schoolers. And Perplexers are the, it's a riff off of the old, very specific reference, logic puzzles that happen, that like you got in Highlights magazine or something like that. So you would get, Abby, Dolly, and Benjamin all moved to the same block. Abby lives to the left of Dolly. Benjamin has a dog. Dolly high-fived Benjamin on Tuesday. And you have to take this grid and you just start Xing out the things that you can rule out so that you eventually figure out which house everyone lives in. It's that, but without the weird boxy grid thing, because that concept was sort of a skill that you had to learn just to be able to do the logic puzzles. And so this is just straight up, this is just a straight up chart. And you just cross off the different options so that you can piece together what's going on. So here is a Yeti crab puzzle, because this is from the Animal Perplexers book. And the Yeti crab, there's a bunch of different crabs. They're named Chris and Clyde and Cloris and Cora and Carl. And you need to figure out how big each one of them was, how deep they were found, what their favorite food was, and how old they were. Right? And so they're going to give you some, in written context, let me get this more onto the screen here. In written context, they're going to give you these details. You rule out the ones that don't apply, and you use that to basically solve the puzzle. This is the endorphin hits of Sudoku put into a context of trivia, and more importantly, reading comprehension. And that's, I think, at the crux of these Perplexers books. Rebecca says, I love logic puzzles as a kid. I've created some for library programs, and kids really enjoy them. And my mom taught me how to divide. Oh, I'm getting another warning here. All right. I don't know what's going on. My phone's being real finicky tonight, and I don't like it. That's what I got to say about it. So thank you very much for your patience. I was just saying that I loved division. When I learned how to divide, I thought it was the coolest thing, and I kept asking my mom for more and more math problems, right? And so maybe that's the kind of feeling that you can foster with, I love logic puzzles. Those were cool. They were a cool challenge. I felt really good when I finished them. That's all great. Goal-based learning. Uh-oh, watch out. We're teaching all kinds of crazy stuff. I think my battery on my phone is being very uncooperative, so I'm going to give you a quick rundown of a couple of other things, and then we're going to end our stream for tonight. So thank you so much for joining us. Hardback is a spelling game. Gamers in the audience would define this as a deck builder, which is a game where you start with a very simple deck of cards, and throughout the course of the game you're going to gain more cards to add to your deck. You will draw a hand of cards, and then you're asked to do something. In this case, you're going to draw a hand of letters, and you're going to have to spell something. Watch out, we're spelling. Then you discard your hand. Your turn is done. You draw a new hand. Whenever you're adding new cards to your deck, they go to your discard pile. So once you draw through your deck, shuffle your discard pile into your deck, and that's how you start drawing your new letters. So I brought this one up because, you're trying to figure out what to do with these letters, spelling, yada yada. What if you had a spelling list and you were trying to specifically spell words on that list, right? So all of a sudden, we've got 3 words that out of my list of 10 that I'm trying to get that all have D's. So all of a sudden that D letter, I got the D, nice. And then that goes into your discard pile, shuffle it up, draw cards, and now you can try to spell these words that are part of your spelling list. I feel like this would work particularly well with middle schoolers, but you could probably simplify this kind of... My gosh. We're working on a better setup for this. How about I tell you that? Maybe next time we'll have it fixed. Who knows? Who can say for sure? Thanks for your patience, though. My last game tonight is an awesome one. It's called Quirky Circuits. And this is going to teach programming. And by that I mean setting up a specific set of actions and then executing those actions. So you're creating a plan, and then you're seeing what happens when that plan gets executed. So in Quirky Circuits, there's a series of scenarios. There are rooms in your house. You got to get them clean, and you've got these cute little animal robots. They're going to clean it for you, like Roombas, but with faces. Actually, there's a cat on top of a Roomba right on the box. So that's how you know it's good, right? So you're going to open up your book, and there's going to be a scenario that's the room. You have to clean it up, and everyone is going to have a hand of cards. That each of these cards is an action, and cooperatively working together to try to overcome the challenge. You're going to, one at a time, play a card in a sequence on the bottom of the board. And once everyone's had a chance to play a card, you're going to execute the cue, which means that you're going to go from the left, do everything in order to the right. This game is super creative. There's 24 unique scenarios, and I think there's a lot of subtle skills here, like planning ahead and sort of logic, envisioning where something is going to be without seeing it move. There's a certain level of abstract to concrete thinking there. But it's also, it's just like it's a puzzle, is what you're trying to solve, and you're trying to solve it with other people. So that's where we get into communication and building rapport, because we're all on the same team. And I think I should do a video on just like cooperative games and how they're awesome in an educational environment. But Quirky Circuits is very unique, and I have to highlight it whenever I get a chance because I think this game is awesome. So, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Oh, I didn't say for Quirky Circuits, that's probably, again, in ages 8 and up, but you can probably cheat it down to like 6 or 7. The game is only going to last maybe 20 or 30 minutes, so if that attention span is there because they're having fun, we're all on the same team, we're working together cooperatively, so it's not really an issue of how young they are as long as they're fine sitting at the table and participating, right? So, and they recommend 2 to 4 players for this. So there you go. Thanks so much for watching our stream tonight. I appreciate it. Obviously, kind of a headache technical difficulties-wise, but y'all have been great. Thank you for joining in, for chiming into the chat, giving us some great stuff to discuss. I want to continue to hear about your experiences with education, and I'm going to be bringing this up as a regular topic. But I just kind of wanted to introduce this, and over time we're going to develop kind of a series of these streams that are all related to how to best use games in education. That's our stream. Happy Thursday. I'm Graham. You're watching Fair Game Favorites, and we will see you next time. Take care.